I woke to the sound of the Westinghouse fan creaking on oscillating mode. That rhythmic metallic sound was the unofficial alarm clock in our house. My mom always said that those who sleep with the fan on wake up earlier because it nudges you with the noise. She might have been right, because by a little after 7 a.m., and I was already open-eyed staring at the cracked plaster ceiling in my bedroom, where the fluorescent Star Wars stickers still glowed a bit from the light they'd absorbed the night before. On the nightstand was a brown glass from the Arby's collection. There was a little leftover Pepsi-Free with melted ice. My dad hated Pepsi-Free. I like drugstore syrup, he'd say, but I thought it was great to drink a caffeine-free soda, as if it made me more mature. I don't know. I got up and went to the living room with its moss-green carpet that clung to everything, including the smell of bacon from the night before. The Zenith TV was still on, the volume low, showing the end of the morning news before The Price is Right. Bob Barker was wearing that Colgate smile my grandmother said wasn't from God. No man smiles like that at 8 a.m. My father had already left for the shop. He fixed carburetors on AMC Gremlins and Datsun 200Ds. And my mother was in the kitchen, wearing a faded pink JCPenney robe, and her hair tied back with an amber plastic clip. She was stirring porridge on the General Electric stove while listening to the radio tuned to WLS, and Casey Kasem was announcing the 7th Top 40 song, Reminiscing, by the Little River Band. It stuck in my head like gum on a sneaker. On the table, my favorite cereal was already waiting for me. Freakies, those weird little monsters in the box that looked like someone had taken LSD and watched too much Sid and Marty Krofft. Beside it, a glass of half-watered Tang and a Montgomery Ward pamphlet, which my mother studied like a Bible, writing down the prices in black pencil and doing math in her head. She was determined to buy a new washing machine before Christmas. I ate slowly, chewing the Freakies like crunchy styrofoam, staring out the front window. The leaves were already beginning to brown on the ground of our street, one of those Illinois suburbs where every house seemed to have been designed by the same lazy architect. Low roofs, rectangular windows, a side garage, and floral wallpaper even in the bathrooms. And in my head, the countdown to the evening's event had already begun. Thursday was drive-in night, and it wasn't just any session. They were going to play Grease and Up in Smoke, a somewhat crazy combo that only made sense in the late 70s. But before that, the day still had ground to cover, and a whole sequence of small rituals that only those who grew up in that era understand. After breakfast, I grabbed my denim jacket, faded just right, with the iron-on patches from Mad Magazine and REO Speedwagon peeling a little at the edges, and headed out. Thursdays weren't the most exciting school days, but knowing there was a movie night ahead, that changed everything. I had this buzz in my chest the whole morning, like the world was holding its breath just a little. On the way to school, I rode my Schwinn Stingray with the banana seat and those little streamers fluttering from the handlebars. There was a cassette wedged into my Panasonic portable player, dangling from the handlebars with duct tape. Cheap fix, but it worked. I dubbed a mix off the radio. ELO, player, a little Donna Summer. The thing ate batteries like crazy, but I loved that scratchy warble it gave to Baby Come Back. My buddy Carl was already waiting for me at the corner by the old Woolco. He had this lazy way of leaning on his bike like he was posing for a Marlboro ad, except he had braces and still smelled like Clearasil. We rode the rest of the way together, cutting through backyards and hitting a few potholes that nearly shook our fillings loose. I remember we passed Mrs. Lafferty's place. She was the neighborhood widow who gave out full-size Clark bars on Halloween. Her garage door was open, and I spotted her curling her hair with one of those old Clairol Mist Stick curlers, still in her housecoat, a cigarette dangling from her lips. At school, everything had that early fall hum. Kids wearing layers in the morning that they'd peel off by lunch. Teachers trying to keep control without really caring because they knew the holidays were creeping in. My classroom smelled like chalk dust and pencil shavings, and our desks still had carved initials and dried-out bubblegum underneath. Mrs. Kinney, our English teacher, had on this paisley blouse with shoulder pads so wide she could have taken flight. She handed out ditto sheets still warm and reeking of that purple ink smell that every kid weirdly loved. God, I can still feel the dampness of those pages. At lunch, we traded chips and Capri Suns. Jimmy Cordell had a thermos of Jell-O 1-2-3, that weird layered dessert that looked like a science project but tasted amazing. He always got the good stuff. I had a bologna sandwich in wax paper and a can of Tab my mom had slipped into my lunch bag with a note that said, "Don't forget to be awesome tonight. Love, Mom." She always used those little flower-shaped stickers from the Hallmark store. The talk at lunch was all about the drive-in. There was this rumor going around that someone's cousin's older brother had seen Up in Smoke 3 times and knew all the lines. We weren't really supposed to be watching Cheech and Chong. Our parents thought they were corrupting minds, but it was part of the double feature, and as long as we sat through Grease first, they figured they could look the other way. Carl was betting his dad would fall asleep in the station wagon before Cheech even lit his first joint on screen. By the time the final bell rang, I could barely sit still. I remember grabbing my peachy folder and stuffing it with half-finished homework and some loose-leaf paper that had doodles of Firebirds and Kiss logos all over them. The sun was slanting low already, casting that amber glow across the sidewalk, and you just knew that something about the night was going to stick. One of those evenings you'd look back on and go, man, that was it. I biked home past the strip mall with the old Radio Shack where Mr. Brenner always stood outside smoking and waving to kids like he was running for mayor. You could hear the beep-beep of test equipment and smell hot plastic from the back room. Next door was the Orange Julius, and I had just enough change for a small one, thick and foamy like a creamsicle in a cup. The clerk had feathered hair and a button that said, "Disco is life." I wanted to believe that. When I got home, my mom was vacuuming with our loud, clunky Hoover convertible, the one that sounded like it might suck the linoleum off the floor. She was humming "You Needed Me" by Anne Murray, and there was a casserole in the oven that made the whole place smell like cream of mushroom soup and green beans. I asked if we were still good for the drive-in, and she nodded, her eyes soft, her voice light. As long as your dad doesn't get caught under a cutlass again. I went to my room to change, picked out my best bell-bottoms and the black t-shirt with the faded Chips logo, still crusty with paint from last week's art project. On the dresser, I had a little tin of Dippity-Doo, just in case my hair needed more body. It didn't. It never did. That hour before we left felt eternal. I kept checking the clock on the wall, the one with the faux wood paneling and the red second hand that ticked with a faint buzz, the kind of clock that felt like it was holding back time on purpose. My dad finally pulled up around 6, his hands greasy, his coveralls zipped to the chest. He gave me that half smile, the one that said, "Let's hit it." We loaded up the Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, the one with the wood paneling on the sides and the rear-facing third-row seat that made you feel like you were in your own world. My mom packed a cooler with sandwiches wrapped in foil, a couple cans of RC Cola, and a thermos of hot chocolate just in case. She also snuck in some Bonkers candy, because she knew I liked the chewy grape ones best. As we pulled out of the driveway, the sun dipped low behind the neighbor's weeping willow, and the sky turned that perfect sherbet orange. The radio was playing Dan Fogelberg's Longer, and none of us talked for a while. We just drove, because some nights start ordinary, and end up carved into your heart forever. We pulled into the Starlight Drive-In around 6:45, just as the sky was bleeding from orange to purple. The sign out front had those big red plastic letters you had to stick in by hand, and someone had spelled Grease with an extra E. My dad made some dry joke about it being extra greasy tonight, and I laughed even though I'd heard that one before. There was already a line of cars curling around the gravel entry road. Everything from rusty Ford Pintos to shiny Pontiac Trans Ams, a few of which had T-tops and screaming chicken decals on the hood. The air was thick with the smell of burned popcorn, engine exhaust, and that faint, sweet scent of mosquito coils lit near people's feet. I always thought it smelled like summer and old socks. The guy at the entrance booth was a teenager with a Led Zeppelin shirt and a pencil tucked behind his ear. He handed us the ticket, $3 per carload, and a little flyer that listed upcoming features. Animal House, the Buddy Holly story, and something called Magic, with Anthony Hopkins that looked downright creepy. We found our spot, 3rd row from the front, slightly off to the right, prime real estate. Close enough for the speaker to work, but far enough that you didn't get hit with headlights when someone arrived late. Dad rolled the window down and hooked the metal speaker onto it, adjusting the volume knob like he was trying to fine-tune the world. The voice crackled a little, but it worked. You could hear the pre-show playing, a commercial for Big League Chew, then an announcement from some local AM station about a lost poodle named Butterscotch. My mom laid out the snacks on a folded quilt from the trunk. She had that thermos of hot cocoa, some bologna sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, and a small Tupperware of Chex Mix, homemade the way only moms could make it, too salty, with Worcestershire and burnt Cheerios. To my left, I could see the Becker family unpacking from their mustard-yellow Chrysler LeBaron. Their daughter Patty was in my grade, always wore barrettes with little fruit charms on them, and her dad had the exact same sunglasses as Eric Estrada on chips. To our right, an older couple had brought lawn chairs and a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, the box with Colonel Sanders' face looking a little more judgmental in the flickering twilight. I stretched out in the back, resting my head against a pillow from home, the kind with the itchy polyester cover. My parents sat up front talking in low voices, sipping cocoa. My mom was rubbing her wrist, probably from vacuuming too hard again, and my dad was staring at the projection booth like he was waiting for magic to start. The sun had disappeared now, leaving just a ribbon of lavender along the horizon. Kids were chasing each other between the cars, the crunch of gravel under sneakers and the occasional scream or laugh echoing in the open air. Someone had a boombox on top of their car, playing Steve Miller Band's Jungle Love, and a few teenagers were dancing in bell-bottoms and tube tops like it was solid gold. The whole place felt alive, like everyone had agreed to pause real life for one night. Just before the trailers started, my dad lit a bug coil and placed it near the rear wheel. My mom handed me a plastic cup of hot cocoa, and I took a sip. Burned my tongue a little, but I didn't care. There was something about the warmth mixing with the cool air and the scratchy speaker buzz that made it feel like we were all part of something bigger. Then came the trailers, cheesy horror flicks, some movie with Burt Reynolds driving fast and smiling cocky, and a war film my dad perked up for. My mom sighed and said, "Not every movie needs to explode, Frank." He just grinned and said, "But it doesn't hurt." The moment Grease started, the crowd settled. The screen lit up, huge and a little grainy, like an old Polaroid. Danny and Sandy dancing on the beach, the familiar doo-wop intro rolling in. People started singing along, clapping, even honking horns at the best parts. It was like a mini concert in a field of cars. When Summer Nights played, the couple in front of us danced in their headlights, spinning each other like they were 20 years younger. Carl showed up midway through, his dad parking a few rows behind us. He came over with a bucket of popcorn and plopped into our back seat without asking. We split a bag of space dust, that weird, crackling candy that felt like static in your mouth. I remember turning to him and whispering, "This night's kind of perfect, huh?" And he just nodded, mouth full, eyes locked on the screen. But right as the last scene of Grease started, the one where Danny's in the leather jacket and Sandy's all dolled up, "You're the One That I Want" blasting through the speaker, something weird happened. The screen flickered once, then again, then it went totally black, and every single car fell silent. At first we thought maybe someone leaned on the wrong switch back in the projection booth. That kind of thing happens sometimes, usually followed by a slow flicker and the film sputtering back to life. But this time, it didn't. The screen stayed pitch black. The speaker on our window gave one last sputter, something that sounded like a distorted zzz, and then silence. Real silence. Not just the kind where no one's talking, but the kind where everything suddenly drops away. No soundtrack, no dialogue, no light from the screen. Just the soft rustle of jackets, the creak of car seats, and someone coughing 3 rows over. It was like the whole drive-in had collectively lost its breath. Dad leaned out of the window, looking around. "That's not just the movie," he muttered. "Everything's out." And sure enough, the string of orange sodium lights along the perimeter of the lot were dark. The snack bar, barely visible in the distance, was pitch black too. Even the neon open sign that usually flickered by the concession stand was dead. Some kids started clapping, half joking, trying to cut the tension, but it faded quick. Nobody moved. I remember thinking it felt like we were underwater, like the world had suddenly gone muffled and slow. Carl whispered, "What the heck's going on?" And for once, I didn't have anything smart to say. Then came the awkward shifting. The hum of engines starting up here and there, just enough to break the silence, but not enough for anyone to actually leave. Most people just sat there, looking at the empty screen like it might suddenly spark back to life if they stared hard enough. My mom sighed, wrapping her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "Must be a blown transformer," she said, like she knew what that meant. My dad nodded, but didn't move. He just stared ahead, tapping his thumb against the steering wheel. Behind us, a little kid started crying. One of those confused, overtired cries. His mom was trying to console him, her voice echoing faintly across the lot. "It's okay, honey. The movie just went night-night." It sounded silly and sweet and a little sad all at once. I leaned my head back, looking out the rear window, and saw nothing but silhouettes of cars against a starless sky. The stars were there, sure, but the cloud cover was thick that night. No moonlight. Just darkness and the occasional flick of a cigarette lighter or flashlight. It's funny, how many moments in your life do you actually remember when nothing is happening? Not a fight, not a celebration, just stillness. That night, we all just sat there, waiting for someone to fix it, waiting for someone to tell us what to do, waiting, maybe, for something more. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20. But I remember every second of it, because in that odd, soundless space, something shifted. People stopped rustling. Nobody honked. Nobody cursed. Nobody got out to check under their hood or storm up to the snack bar demanding a refund. They just sat. We all did. In that quiet, dark field, it felt like the entire world had pressed pause. And somehow, we were okay with it. I could feel the warm breath of my mom beside me, my dad's fingers still lightly tapping, Carl sitting next to me, now cross-legged with the bucket of popcorn untouched in his lap, and from somewhere across the lot, someone started softly humming, "Hopelessly Devoted to You." Just a few notes, maybe on a dare. Then someone else picked it up, then a couple more, and soon a weird little chorus was floating through the cars, out of tune, barely audible, but unmistakably real. No one planned it. No one led it. It just happened. Can you remember a moment like that? One where nobody told you what to do and yet everyone just knew? Where were you the last time silence felt sacred? Because I swear, on that October night in '78, it was the quiet that made the memory stick. Not the movie, not the popcorn, not even the freeze frame of Danny and Sandy we never got to see. It was the way the whole drive-in, full of strangers and half-broken speakers and foil-wrapped sandwiches, sat together in the dark and waited. I don't know how long we were all just sitting there, suspended in that strange quiet, but I remember the exact second it changed. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flicker, just a tiny one, a soft pulse of red, then another. Someone had turned on their car's dome light, not to leave, just to illuminate the inside. Maybe they were looking for something in the glove box. Maybe they were trying to check the time. But in that instant, the stillness began to glow. One by one, little pinpricks of light blinked on across the lot. Not headlights, just interiors. Just people, trying to see each other. It was like fireflies in slow motion. Then someone cranked a transistor radio from the back of their station wagon. I'll never forget it. It was tuned to WLS Chicago, and the DJ, clearly unaware of our blackout, announced with his usual smarm, "Coming up next, we got a little Olivia Newton-John for all you summer dreamers out there. This one's for the hopelessly devoted." And there it was. "Hopelessly Devoted to You" began playing, staticky and low, barely rising above the hum of night crickets and distant engines. A wave passed through the drive-in. People smiled, leaned back, settled in. We didn't get the screen back, but somehow, we didn't need it. My mom chuckled under her breath, whispering, "Guess Olivia showed up after all." My dad reached over and gave her hand a little squeeze. He didn't say anything, but that was kind of his way. And right then, something just clicked. Carl opened the back gate of our Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, pulled out the pillows and that old quilt, and we laid it across the roof. Crawled up like two kids at a sleepover, lying flat, hands behind our heads. A few cars over, a family had pulled out their Coleman lantern, and they were playing Uno under it. The dad wore a beltless tracksuit and tube socks, and the mom had curlers still in her hair. It should have felt absurd, but instead it felt perfect. Somebody turned on their headlights just briefly, so their little girl could twirl in front of them, pretending to be Sandy. She had a plastic Ben Cooper costume cape on, probably left over from Halloween last year, and she was singing into a hairbrush. And you know what? Nobody told her to stop. Nobody honked. We all just watched. There was laughter now, that kind of slow, low laughter that bubbles up when no one's in a hurry. Across the way, a group of teenagers pulled out an Etch-A-Sketch, trying to recreate the Grease logo in aluminum powder. One guy in a jean vest with a Kiss Army patch was trying to sing Greased Lightnin' from memory, and failing spectacularly, but he had backup singers. 3 girls in satin disco jackets and glittered cheeks joined in, dancing with Twizzlers as microphones. It was the kind of ridiculous, spontaneous fun that you never set out to create, but man, when it shows up, you feel it in your chest. My mom passed me another bonkers candy, this one watermelon. I bit into it and the syrupy center exploded onto my tongue like a tiny flavor bomb. That candy doesn't exist anymore. Just like that night. Just like that version of the world. At some point, I remember looking over at Carl and saying, "You think they'll give us refunds?" He shook his head. "Man, this is better than any movie." And he was right. That night, something happened that no Hollywood script could have planned. A field full of strangers who came to watch a flick and maybe smuggle in some extra snacks ended up participating in something far more real. We didn't finish Grease. Never even got to Up in Smoke. Which, if I'm honest, our parents probably weren't all that sad about. But what we did get was a kind of magic. Old Mr. Partridge, who ran the coin-op laundromat in town, was parked in the back row in his ancient Buick Electra, and at one point, he pulled out a thermos brand coffee jug, poured himself a cup, and raised it like a toast. Someone noticed, and 2 rows over, a group of teenagers raised their soda cans, and then another, and another. That night, without power, without film, without direction, we had a moment. One of those unplanned, unfiltered slices of life that sticks to your ribs like mom's meatloaf. And what was even wilder, nobody wanted to leave. Some cars eventually peeled off, sure. Families with babies. A couple of cranky folks. But most of us stayed. Not for the movie, but because something about that field, those cars, that moment, felt too good to let go. It wasn't just nostalgia in the making. It was communion. The kind you only get once or twice in a lifetime. Let me ask you something. Do you remember a moment like that? Where the thing you went to do didn't even happen, but what did happen ended up meaning more? Because that's what that night was. The power went out. The movie stopped, but we didn't.